UFC Fight Night 253, Manel Kape versus Almabayev. And we are doing pretty well. All right, not too bad last week. 6-5 on the picks, so did pretty decent. So we've been going positive. I'd say the past 3 weeks. Not too bad at all. We got some decent fights on this card, some finishing potential here and there. Some guys who need to keep moving up the ladder. Some are just on the card to be on the card. I'm talking to you, co-main event. But we're going to go ahead and get into it. As we go through this video, you got your low-risk faves indicated by this money symbol. I think those are decent bets. And then we have our emotional support underdogs that we're going to have a couple of those, maybe even more on this card. So let's go ahead and get into it in the prelims. First, we got my boy Charles Johnson versus Temirov. This is a pretty darn good fight. This one's going to be a lot of action. I do have Charles Johnson in this fight. I don't know why I have a money symbol. That is technically an underdog pick. I think Temirov just gets a little too wild. He swings with a ton of power. He moves forward, but I think he leaves himself out of position a ton. And with a guy like Johnson who's going to be longer, bigger, I think he's going to have the grappling advantage. I just see Johnson having too many opportunities to take advantage of the mistakes of Temirov. I think Johnson is just... he's too willing to be there in the chaos for these wild shots that Temirov is throwing to actually do anything. I think Temirov also has some decent trips. I don't think that's going to play a factor in this fight really much at all. So I definitely am going to give the edge to Johnson on that one. Next we got Montana De La Rosa versus Luana Carolina. I'm going with Luana Carolina. I think that's a good bet as well. Montana De La Rosa recently getting the split decision win over Andrea Lee and also being lower on the card, ironically. Losing to Andrea Lee in the past, coming back for a split decision, and I didn't really see anything that impressed me in that fight. What does impress me is that Luana Carolina is on a 3-fight win streak, is doing one of those getting a finish as well. Also, I think having a win over Lupita Godinez, which I do rate pretty well. I just think Montana De La Rosa isn't going to be able to push any sort of pace in the grappling or the striking that Luana Carolina isn't going to be able to meet. I just think Luana Carolina has got her beaten a few. And I think she's going to win based off being, honestly, just the dog. I don't think Luana Carolina is easily bullied. I think you really have to be much more skilled, or you have to have some sort of finishing potential to get Luana Carolina out of there. So I'm going to go with Luana Carolina here. Next, we're moving on to Lucas Almeida versus Silva. We're going with Silva. I think Lucas Almeida recently, I was just looking at this too. I'm not liking a lot of the stats I'm seeing here. Unanimous decision win over Timmy Kwamba. Okay, but knockout loss to Andre Fili and a submission loss to Pat Sabatini. Don't get me wrong, Pat Sabatini's a great grappler, so if you're going to get submitted by anyone, get submitted by him. But then knockout against Andre Fili. These are decent featherweights, but I'm not too amazed by his past wins either. Losing to Daniel Selcuber, it's not a terrible person to lose to, and that's also up a weight class. But then when I look at Danny Silva here, a guy who's relatively new to brand new to the UFC, I don't know. I get a lot more confidence out of this momentum here. And, man, this one was honestly the hardest one to go against because I just really like Danny Silva's finishing potential in the stand-up. Just a lot of good wins on the feet and variety in how it was done too, whether that be to the body or head. So I think Silva's gonna get it here. I also like that he's the younger guy, but at a similar height and reach. There's just too many factors. This is a very close fight in my opinion. But it's just too many factors going in the favor of Silva here. Next, we got Andrea Lee versus JJ Aldrich. First underdog on the card, we're going to go with Andrea Lee. I don't know why that heart came up first. We're actually going to go with Andrea Lee here. I also don't think I picked Andrade. But yeah, I think Andrea Lee is just a little too skilled. Definitely is not as fast as she used to be. Not as much power she used to be. And yeah, so it makes it a lot harder for her to recover from a lot of the grappling exchanges that she sometimes gets caught on bottom end. She has a decent bottom guard, having I think some submissions from bottom guard even. But I don't think JJ Aldrich is even going to have the skill or ability to close the distance enough on Andrea Lee to get the takedown. I think Andrea Lee is really going to focus hard on making JJ pay for whenever she does try to enter. So I think we're going to see a much more to form Andrea Lee here. Next we got Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Castañeda here. We are going with Castañeda, not an underdog. My bad there, folks. We are going to go with Castañeda. There is a bit of worry here for me because Castañeda, when he does get landed on, like a guy who, against Daniel Marcos, who was landing on him pretty clean, he does tend to pack up. He does do a good job circling instead of just backing straight up. Castañeda is much more footwork oriented, a lot faster, not as much power on the shots. But Douglas de Andrade, I just think he has a good variety of weapons, but I don't think they're as crisp and technical and tight as Daniel Marcos. So I think Castañeda is going to do a much better job of getting outside angles. He's going to do a much better job of mixing things up. I think it's going to make it harder for Andrade to land his spinning body kicks. Maybe his spinning head kicks could be more viable in this fight, but also at 39 years old, maybe even 40. I'd have to double check. In fact, let me see if Andrade is 39 or 40, because I think that matters at the lower weight classes. Maybe not so much. Okay, 39. I don't think that matters as much at the higher weight classes. And something I'm seeing too, because John Castañeda is going to try and stay on the outside, use kicks. The reach is much more pronounced for Castañeda as well by 3 inches. And I think Andrade is just going to have a harder time at this point in his career closing that distance to land more damaging shots. So we're going with Castañeda here. Next we got Ramos versus Chepe Mariscal. We're going Mariscal. Obviously, I think you can see the odds there. Definitely shouldn't be that wide, but the experience and opponents of Mariscal, I mean, great boxing, decent grappling. Mariscal has been through the who's who. Now, not going to be good on the reach disadvantage here for Mariscal, but he's good at getting on the inside of guys. Wins against Damon Jackson, Morgan Sherrier, Jack Jansen, Trevor Peak. And this Trevor Peak fight, was this at a... this may have been at a higher weight class too. So, yeah, Mariscal also winning in lightweight and featherweight, doing a great job here. And Jack Jenkins, I mean, if you saw on the recent Australia card, that's a great win to have on your record. And even before he got to the UFC, he lost to some of these guys, but also beat certain guys like Yusuf Zalal, great win. But lost to good competition too. Steve Garcia, Joe Anderson Brito. Those aren't bad losses to have outside the UFC. You know, that's great experience to have before you get in. So ultimately, I just think Ramos isn't going to be able to handle the momentum and the tools that Mariscal is going to bring. I think the breadth of experience is just going to be way too much in my opinion. So, and I think we're going to see finishes and possibly the Johnson Temirov fight and Andrade versus Castañeda fight. And honestly, looking at it now, we might not... Mariscal hasn't gotten any finishes. He's got a verbal tap out from Jack Jenkins, but no real finishes yet in the UFC. We could possibly see one from him this time. Who knows? Moving on to our main card. There's my little heart. Moving on, we got Danny Barlow versus Sam Patterson. 2 tall boys. I think in the welterweight division, if I am not mistaken. Double checking that. Yes, that is in the welterweight division. Both Sam Patterson usually having the height and reach advantage. Actually an inch shorter in reach for this one against Danny Barlow. And Danny Barlow looks much better on the feet than Sam Patterson. Danny Barlow, great, very slick, unorthodox strikes, but good technical rhythm. And great kicks too. A lot of good kicks and variety of kicks as well. Sam Patterson also has decent striking. Chin is usually up in the air, and these guys, you know, with Danny Barlow, he's going to be at head height for him, so it's going to be a lot easier. Guys aren't going to be having to strike up at Sam Patterson. Danny Barlow isn't going to have to do that this fight. I think I see Sam Patterson getting caught because Danny Barlow has great takedown defense. That's what Sam Patterson is probably going to try and do here. Sam Patterson does have decent trips, and he usually is able to get him with the body locks on smaller guys. I just don't see that happening with Danny Barlow because it's just not going to be the same kind of fight that you have with these much shorter welterweights. You're going to have a lot more trouble. And Danny Barlow himself has really good clinch wrestling, good cage wrestling. He digs good underhooks himself, gets his own decent takedowns himself. He got some in his last fight. I think this is easy, and these odds I think make a lot of sense. I could see Danny Barlow pretty easily taking this. Next, we got William Gomis versus Hyder Amil. I'm going with William Gomis. This is a pretty dangerous fight for Gomis, too. Amil swings with a lot of heat. Decent technique with it. Gets a little wild, gets a little off balance at times, but he does that a lot to transition into his very oppressive grappling. But as we saw in the was it Joe Anderson? Who was it that he last fought? William Gomis. It may have been Joe Anderson Brito. Who was it? Yeah, Joe Anderson Brito, who he's got a win against, and Gomis, who beat Joe Anderson Brito. Joe Anderson Brito also has a win over Chepe Mariscal, who I rate pretty well. A little MMA math there, but we do it sometimes. We participate in MMA arithmetic sometimes here. I just think Gomez's takedown defense is going to be really good, and Amil is going to have the shorter reach, I think, in this fight, whereas Gomis with the 73-inch reach, Hyder Amil with the 70-inch reach, so 3 inches of reach he's given up there. I think that's going to be pretty tough, and Amil isn't really a straight shot guy. Definitely more of the hooks and the big overhands is what we're going to see here. And I think Gomis is just going to be able to get out of the way. He's the slicker striker. Not as much sting on his shots as Amil, but the takedown defense and the ability to stay at space, I think Gomis is going to be able to get a win here and maybe even catch Amil and finish him. So we'll have to see how that goes down, but that's definitely a dangerous fight for Gomis. Next, we got Austen Lane versus Mario Pinto. Too bad for Austen Lane, man. He transitioning into this career has been tough, I will say. He's got great size and decent athleticism for the UFC, but the skills aren't. He's not like great in any one area. He's not even necessarily really good in any one area either. Whenever he fought Robelis Despain, he beat him, but I wasn't really impressed with the grappling. I was impressed at him being smart enough to not just charge in on Robelis and let Robelis knock him out. That just shows discipline. I think Lane, as like a lifelong athlete, he does have that good mentality. But Pinto, man, very, very technical striker, defensively sound, super defensively sound. Grappling, I guess we could say, is a bit untested here in terms of the UFC. So we do still have that X factor where Lane could be like drilling that hard here, because he might be facing the same kind of thing he had against Robelis Despain, where Pinto can put his lights out bad, really bad. And Lane is, I think he's already been knocked out, I think, multiple times in the UFC already. Let me see here. Also, I don't think this is a main card bout anymore ever since the kind of the shakeup. I think a lot of things have got shaken up on this card. Yeah, getting knocked out by Johanna Diniz and Justin Tafa. Not the best. Before getting into the UFC, looked pretty darn good, but got knocked out by Greg Hardy on the Contender Series whenever he was debuting. Very weird Contender Series fight. But they put two NFL players together and just see which one they'll get, I guess, which is a strange strategy. But yeah, all of his losses coming by knockout is not a good sign. So definitely going with Pinto here. Next, we got probably the best fight on the card, in my opinion, besides the main event. Main event is pretty close in entertainment for this next one. Nasrat Haqparast versus Esteban Ribovics. Man, this is a tough one, and I don't think these odds should be that wide. I really don't think these odds should be as wide as they are. Maybe it's because they're thinking stylistically this could be tough for Nasrat, but I actually think the very opposite. Nasrat Haqparast is going to have the reach advantage. He's going to have the speed advantage, and he's going to have the footwork advantage against Esteban. We saw that in the Jared Gordon fight. Jared Gordon had to use a lot of grappling, a lot of single legs to push Nasrat against the fence for Jared to land his own shots. But a lot of people thought that was a robbery. I think that fight truly could have went either way. Nasrat, a lot of those times, would land a good 5-punch combination after Jared had controlled him for a bit, landing pot shots here and there, and decent shots. Jared still landed good shots, damaging shots. And I think the cut over Nasrat may have swayed people to think one way about the fight, but Nasrat was landing clean and hard on Jared, and it was affecting him. And it looked great. The footwork looked great. The speed looked great. And I just think Esteban, although he is a fantastic striker, he will go to the head. He will go to the body. Whenever he does jab, he does keep his rear hand up. But I think he does get a little wild at times, and he does leave himself hanging there when he does try to go for bigger combinations. And he doesn't have a lot of variety when he's going for the finish either. He will stick to the hands. Like when he really hurt Daniel Zellhuber, we only saw hands. And that was kind of hard to watch. I really want to see a mix-up of strikes, with knees, elbows, and everything. If you're going for that kind of finish against that level of opponent who you've been kickboxing with the whole fight, that's just going to be something they're not expecting. I don't think Esteban has that level of fight IQ that Nasrat has. Nasrat's just got crazy good experience, and I think this is an opponent he can take advantage of with mistakes. And Nasrat also does what I think Ribovics doesn't do, which is throw variety. He steps into hard elbows. I think we could see Esteban get those elbows cut through his guard and cut his face a little bit, and we can get some damage from that. So I think Nasrat is actually going to be a good underdog and good value underdog here. Plus 215 for a Nasrat Haqparast, who's on I think he's on a pretty darn good win streak right now. Maybe even a 4-fight win streak. Let me check that out real quick. He is on, 4-fight win streak. Now, I don't really rate the Jamie Malarkey win before the Jared Gordon win, but I do rate the Jared Gordon win because Jared has only looked better and better in every fight, and I think we're going to see a similar trend with Nasrat and his improvement here if he's coming in nice and healthy, which I do hope so. Next, we got our co-main event. We got Cody Brundage versus Julian Marquez. I'm never picking Cody Brundage in a fight ever. I am sorry. I think Julian Marquez is going to win. I didn't even care enough about the animation slides to put his check in the right order. So now you know who I think for the main event. But you should have made Nasrat Haqparast versus Esteban Ribovics the co-main event. Cody Brundage, in his last 7 fights, his 2 wins was a slam KO when a guy was trying to submit him from a triangle, I think. And then his opponent got DQ'd after whooping his ass because he threw an elbow to the back of the head. And then same thing happened with Al Hassan. Absolutely melted Brundage and accidentally landed an illegal shot. I think Julian Marquez is going to boop him. Marquez is way over the hill at this point too. Swings way too wild, is not that defensively sound. I don't think Brundage he's going to have a round of grappling, I think, against Marquez. I should pick Brundage, truly, but I want to see Brundage booped by Marquez. I do. This is ridiculous why Brundage is still in the UFC. I don't understand it. Maybe I need to check his Instagram. Maybe he's got more followers than I realize. But yeah, Julian Marquez by KO, hopefully. Next, we have our main event, Manel Kape versus Almabayev. This is a fantastic fight. I do think Manel Kape is going to win if he comes in the form he came in against Bruno Silva. Never mind. I was thinking about saying a very controversial thing a conspiracy I have about Manel Kape, but I don't want to say it. It's a very irresponsible thing to say. But that being said, I don't like that Manel Kape is very inconsistent with his performances. I feel like I see a different version of Manel Kape at times. Like in the Muhammad Mokaev fight, is not the same guy that I saw in the Bruno Silva fight. Obviously, those are 2 very different opponents, and Muhammad Mokaev I rate pretty highly. I think it's just a matter of fact. If we see the Manel Kape that came in against Bruno Silva, that Manel Kape can beat, I think, any flyweight on the planet. And that's just the truth to me. Almabayev, the thing is, I don't also rate the experience of Almabayev. Although he has a extensive 21-2 record, if I remember correctly, there's not really the level of opponent isn't there for me. With only 4 UFC fights, Ode Osborne, a good one to go against. CJ Vergara, the fact you went decision to him, I feel like that's an opponent you should be finishing if you're going for title implications. Jose Johnson, again, I'm not really rating that too high. Jose Johnson is like super tall, lanky flyweight, and that's, I don't know, a 6 foot tall flyweight. I don't think you could ever be a UFC champ, to be honest. Mateus Nicolau, that's a great win. But before that, when I'm looking through the record, yeah, it's okay. And the losses the losses on Almabayev's record I do rate, like a loss to Tagir Ulanbekov. That's nothing to be ashamed about in this day and age. Um, yeah, I just think Manel Kape, man, he's just faced the opponents he's faced in his career at 20-7, man. Um, I'm talking even early on in his career, not even counting his UFC stint so far. I'm talking Kaya Sakura win over him. I'm talking about a loss, but it's a fight against Kyoji Horiguchi back in 2017, way early on in his career. I rate this experience, and when I'm taking the skills of both guys, and I'm thinking about what I've seen in both of their last fights, Manel Kape should win. He really should win, and I do think these odds are perfect. -230 plus 185. I think that's incredibly accurate. Yeah, we should see Manel Kape win, and if he comes in the form he was in before, nah, I don't think he'll finish Almabayev. Almabayev is incredibly difficult to finish. But I think we will see a Manel Kape decision win. This is also a last-minute opponent for Almabayev. I think that's going to be tough for him. I think Manel Kape is more of a fighter where if it's an opponent that's last-minute filling in, I think he might even feel a bit more free in there. And he seems locked in. I like his attitude recently. A lot of these guys where you feel like they're at a pinnacle of skill and athleticism, you start looking at those tertiary things of like what's their mindset like, because then those things are going to really affect their decision making. So yeah, I think Manel Kape's going to get this one done. Not really a name-filled card. I think really the best fights on this card are Nasrat Haqparast, the main event. Danny Barlow, Sam Patterson's pretty cool. Like all the main card fights besides like even Austen Lee Mario Pinto is a pretty dope fight. The co-main event is really the only one. In terms of name value, it's not great, but the skill that we're going to see in the main card, I think finishing potential is going to also be pretty high for these fights on the card. But if I'm going to the prelims, let me go back to our prelim bouts. Yeah, these prelim bouts, like Charles Johnson versus Ramazan Temirov. I mean, if you're just doing that to really get like more eyes on the prelims, then I get it. But Charles Johnson, bro, needs to be on a main card. This is crazy, bro. The fact that the matchmakers have such a bad impression of Charles Johnson for whatever dumb reason. I think he even said it too in that recent Oban Elliott X space. I forgot what it was, having to do with him asking for matchups and getting upset. Yeah, that should be on the main card because you could easily see Charles Johnson contend for a title, and that would give some good, maybe possible call outs for the main event. Charles Johnson could call out the winner. Who knows? Like if Almabayev wins, I don't think he gets a title shot, but if Charles Johnson looks incredible and gets another win, I think that would be a 5-fight win streak for Charles Johnson. Let me check on that. I know we're at the end of our picks, but I'm really kind of upset about how they done my boy Charles Johnson. That would make him on a 5-fight win streak with great names, with Jake Hadley being one of them, Joshua Van, who's been on fire lately, being one of them. If he were to add Ramazan Temirov and all that, you need to start thinking about top 5 opponents for this man, is all I'm going to say. Yeah, okay. And parlay of the card, we got Silva, Barlow, Pinto, Haqparast. Throw that hardcore underdog at the end of that parlay if you got some cojones. All right, that is my picks for this week. Tune in for some local MMA. I'm kind of thinking Combat FC maybe this week. I was thinking about doing that one. I'll look at maybe some other regional cards if I'm feeling something else, but that's probably going to be the one we're going to do. See ya.